Unfunded liabilities and debt, the $200 trillion time bomb ticking. If you're ready to uncover the hidden chains dragging our future into the abyss, hit that like, smash the share, and lock in your subscribe or follow, because truth like this demands an army of awakened minds. We're tackling something that's been bubbling under the surface for decades, the massive dangers lurking in our social systems, especially those bloated welfare programs that promise the moon but deliver a black hole of debt. We're talking about unfunded liabilities, those sneaky promises governments make without the cash to back them up, and how they spell trouble for everyone, now and especially down the line. Stick with me as we unpack why these setups aren't just inefficient. They're a straight path to societal rot and economic downfall. Picture this: a system where the government forces you to hand over chunks of your hard-earned money through taxes, only to redistribute it in ways that sound noble but end up chaining future generations to a mountain of obligations. It's like borrowing against your kid's future without asking, all under the guise of helping the needy. These enforced welfare schemes, rooted in ideas that echo the forced equality of Bolshevism, create a web of dependencies that weaken the fabric of self-reliance. And at the heart of it all are these unfunded liabilities. Promises for pensions, healthcare, and handouts that aren't backed by real assets, just IOUs that someone else has to pay later. We'll explore how this setup isn't sustainable and why it's leading us toward decline. But first, let's set the stage on why this matters without getting into the gritty numbers just yet. Imagine a family where the parents rack up credit card debt for lavish vacations and gadgets, promising the kids they'll handle it someday. But instead of paying it off, they just keep borrowing, knowing the bill will land on the children when they're grown. That's the essence of these social programs. They look like safety nets, but they're really traps that shift the weight from today's decisions onto tomorrow's shoulders. Enforced welfare, compelled by the state, isn't about true compassion. It's a mechanism that breeds resentment and inefficiency, turning productive folks into reluctant funders of a system that often rewards idleness over initiative. And when those promises aren't funded properly, they become hidden debts that erode trust, spark inflation, and drag down entire economies. It's a recipe for degeneracy, where personal responsibility fades, and the cycle of dependence deepens across generations. Now, let's pull back the curtain on the real mechanics here. These unfunded liabilities are essentially government vows to pay out benefits in the future without setting aside the money today. Take Social Security, for instance. It's not a personal savings account. It's a pay-as-you-go setup where today's workers fund today's retirees. But with demographics shifting, like the baby boomer wave retiring en masse, around 10,000 a day switching from contributors to claimants, the ratio of workers to beneficiaries has plummeted from 16 to 1 in the 1950s to nearing 2 to 1 now. That means the system is running on fumes, with projections showing the so-called trust fund depleting by 2033, leading to automatic benefit cuts of about 23%. The true shortfall? Over $25 trillion for Social Security alone over the next 75 years, and when you add Medicare's $52 trillion gap, we're staring at nearly $80 trillion in unfunded promises. These aren't just numbers. They're debts disguised as entitlements, forcing future taxpayers to cough up more or face devalued dollars through inflation. And it's not just federal, states are drowning too. Nationwide, unfunded pension liabilities hit $832 billion, with states funding only about 72 cents on the dollar for promised benefits. Places like Illinois and California are poster children for this mess, where pension debts crowd out funding for schools, roads, and public safety. In California, taxpayer contributions to pensions ballooned from $611 million to $3.5 billion in under a decade, all while services suffer. This hidden debt stems from cash accounting tricks, where governments only count expenses when the check clears, ignoring future obligations like a corporation hiding losses off balance sheet. If a private company did this, executives would face jail time, but governments get away with it, masking the true fiscal gap that could top $200 trillion when you factor in all programs. Enforced welfare amplifies this evil. By mandating contributions through taxes, it creates a Ponzi-like structure where early participants benefit at the expense of later ones. In historical terms, think back to the Great Depression in the 1930s, when economic collapse pushed the federal government to expand relief programs, birthing the modern welfare state under pressures that echoed communist ideals of collective provision. But what started as emergency aid morphed into permanent burdens, leading to declines seen in post-war Britain, where inflation liquidated debts but eroded savings and standards of living. Similarly, in the US, the 1970s stagflation highlighted how these systems fuel dependency, with welfare rolls swelling while productivity stalled, contributing to economic malaise. Diving deeper into the themes, enforced welfare isn't just a financial drag. It's a moral hazard that fosters degeneracy. It shifts burdens intergenerationally, robbing the young of opportunities while pampering the old or idle. Future generations face higher taxes to cover these shortfalls, potentially stifling growth by 1 to 2% annually as resources get diverted from innovation to debt service. This creates fiscal inflexibility, where governments can't respond to crises without borrowing more, leading to slower economic expansion and reduced services like education or infrastructure, vital for prosperity. Moreover, it crowds out private investment. High public debt means less capital for businesses, hampering competitiveness. At its core, this is evil because it violates the principle of self-reliance, echoing Bolshevist forced redistribution that historically led to stagnation in places like the Soviet Union, where walls were built not just to keep people in but to hide economic failures. Unfunded liabilities are the hidden debt that must be paid either through crushing future taxes, which burden the productive, or via inflation, which stealthily destroys savings value. Inflation acts as a silent tax, eroding purchasing power while governments print money to meet obligations, as seen in post-war eras where negative real interest rates wiped out debt but impoverished savers. This leads to decline. Middle classes shrink, incentives to work diminish, and societies degenerate into cycles of entitlement and resentment. The intergenerational aspect is particularly insidious. These systems borrow from the unborn, imposing debts without consent. Estimates show U.S. unfunded obligations at $73 to $80 trillion, nearly all from Social Security and Medicare, equating to over $600,000 per household. This isn't fairness. It's theft, creating a divide where the young pay for the old's promises, fostering alienation and potential social unrest. In states, unfunded pensions threaten bankruptcies, as in Detroit's 2013 collapse, where hidden liabilities force cuts and asset sales. And it's not just pensions. Retiree healthcare adds another $500 billion in unfunded gaps, often paid from current revenues, squeezing budgets further. The overall effect? A welfare state that promises security but delivers insecurity, where enforced contributions breed dependency, reducing workforce participation and national savings. Studies show shifting to funded systems could boost savings by 30 to 40%, but sticking with unfunded ones perpetuates the cycle. Let me share some stark insights from the trenches of this issue. One report nails it. The federal unfunded liabilities are catastrophic for future taxpayers and economic growth, roughly $1.1 million per taxpayer. Another highlights the stealth. These outsized benefits for well-off retirees are a key driver of the program's financial problems. And on the burden, future generations will likely face higher taxes to cover these mounting obligations, reduced government services, slower economic growth. Historically, from the 1930s, the severe depression made federal action a necessity, as neither states nor private charities had the resources. But now, it's flipped. The trust fund is projected to run dry in 2033, triggering a 23% benefit cut. These echo the degeneracy. Continued dependence upon relief induces a spiritual and moral disintegration fundamentally destructive to the national fiber. Wrapping this up, if we want to avoid the decline these systems guarantee, we need radical shifts. Ditch the enforced welfare mindset, phase out unfunded programs, transition to private, funded accounts where individuals control their futures. Encourage personal savings with tax incentives, not mandates. For governments, adopt accrual accounting to expose hidden debts, and cap spending to GDP ratios to prevent intergenerational theft. Individuals diversify gold, crypto, real assets to hedge against the inflation bomb. Ultimately, reclaim self-reliance. Reject the Bolshevik trap of collective burdens. Let's build a future free from these chains. Stay skeptical. Stay free.